Hey, Sophia.
Hey, Emmanuel.
I'm super excited.
Why?
Because
Me too.
it's almost Halloween, and that
this is
means
true.
it's almost time to get scared, to get spooked.
Oh, it's the spooky season.
It's the spooky
It's
season.
the spooky season.
And I'm even more excited because there's another way for me to get spooked and also get a little bit of that superhero kick that I like all the time.
It's true. It's basically what our pod is entirely about.
Superheroes, and
Soups.
that is by watching the Hulu original series Hellstrom. Just in time for Halloween.
Yeah.
It's suspenseful, mysterious, scary, dark, chilling. It has dry humor and
Oh
it's
my
edgy, but there's
gosh.
also some superhero action in it.
All of this in one show.
All of this in one show. It's from Marvel Television. It's Hellstrom,
Wow.
based on some characters from comic books. And I don't have to wait anymore because
No.
it's now streaming. All episodes are streaming on Hulu right now.
Oh my gosh. Well, we got to go watch it.
Let's go right now.
Okay, let's go.
But their story didn't end there.
How could there have been only one? And he's back in business.
Is the worst idea in history of bad ideas.
Part 2 is the final chapter in the violent history of...
This time, it's personal.
The ones who got off that roller coaster are still going to die. Unless we can figure out how to stop it.
I never thought I could see my own death before it happened.
If you like roller coasters, tanning beds, Abraham Lincoln, big truck engines, nail guns, fireworks, subways, premonitions, funerals, high schools, and time jumps, or the inescapable clutches of a horrific death, you're going to love the sequel we're talking about this week. We're talking Final Destination 3 as part of our horror Halloween. We're almost done with all of the horror movies for this scary October.
Recording, yeah, but like I think backwards. I don't know.
That's
I don't know
true.
what's the release date. There might be backwards. The release date is probably backwards.
My name's Emmanuel,
Hey, I'm Andrew.
Hey, this is John.
and joining us, frozen on the Zoom screen, but hopefully not frozen in real life, it's our boy.
Roy, hey, what's up?
Yes.
I
thought you were gonna say my
There's
name.
no name. Me too.
Roy,
I was someone say his name.
I was going to try to get him to say it, but Roy, welcome back to the pod.
Yo, thanks for having me.
Are you afraid of death?
Nah, not really. I've accepted it already.
Well,
Like, I don't know. I went through this whole thing when I was a teenager, and I was fucking depressed like
Hey.
every day. Like, I was just like,
it sounds
I'm
like
gonna-
you're saying you're accepting death.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I die, it's okay. But like, I don't want it to be painful though. Like, I'm okay with it.
Or I feel like in this movie put a fear of death in me to say is like a fear of accidental death, because like
Yeah.
you just kind of some of these deaths in this movie they're played up for brutal, but once you kind of step away from them, they're kind of embarrassing, and they're kind of like cheesy horror. They're obviously horror movie deaths.
We're like, damn, that girl got 10 to death.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like 1,000 Ways to Die. Like you're watching these things where like the most ridiculous thing happens to you when you fucking kick the bucket. I was gonna say bite the bucket.
Well, Roy, I want to ask you first, and then I'll ask John and Andrew. But what when you watch these Final Destination movies, I assume as a child or as a kid, how did they make you feel? Did they work on you? Were you scared of following trucks that had logs on them and stuff?
Yeah, actually, like the situations always scare me. Like, yeah, like driving behind a truck, or actually, like we're at Six Flags last year for our company that rented out Six Flags, and we were on the roller coaster, and it wouldn't want to start, and like they were like, "Hold on, give us a minute," but we couldn't get off because those I don't know what the thing is called that hold you down wouldn't lift up. So they were like working on it, and like this movie instantly came into my mind. And they were like, they fixed it after like 5 minutes. And they're like, "Do you guys still want to go?" And I was like, "Hell no, get me off right now!" Like, so I mean, like the movie scares me from like the scenes that happen, not the movie in general.
Mm.
Well, I'll ask you, John, first. What did you think about Final Destination when you were younger?
I thought it was horrifying. I think the first movie, I've seen the first two movies. Uh, I think the strongest one is probably the second, but watching them as a kid kind of, I don't know, it's kind of horrifying. You know, you're watching this, especially when you watch the first initial big death scene where, either the plane blows up, which is one of the more horrifying plane destruction scenes in cinema history, or, the car crash scene from the second one, which is also, I think, the most plausible thing to happen, because you hear about car pileups all the time. And even though, like, it looks like Michael Bay, like, was in, death was in a Michael Bay mood, I guess, when you watch that second one. It's still kind of scary, because you're getting, for some reason, the performances really kind of sell like the fear of it happening in that situation. And there's something kind of hopeless about these movies. Like, in every other movie, it's kind of, they're structured kind of like slasher films, but there's no monster, there's no killer except like an actual force. So it's weird, or it's a little, I don't want to say weird, but it's interesting to see a movie franchise where death is inevitable. Like, you're kind of just counting down like the characters, and you it's almost like a certainty that none of them are going to survive.
Yeah, Andrew, we went to Disneyland in March and we rode on a roller coaster. Would you have stopped me if I had told you that? Wait, what if I had told you? Wait a minute, let me ask this question better. I saw a premonition where we died, Andrew, and I still let us get on there.
Oh yeah. Well, and so it's funny because I assume that the same question applies to me, but
Yeah,
I
it is.
but yeah, I was about 8 years old when I saw the first one, and it's funny because you were talking about us going to Disneyland because I thought of that exactly when like the Monsters Inc. ride shut down, and then you're just gonna have fucking Randall jump out of one of these doors and fucking take Boo away and shit. That's the vision I saw, is like him taking you into one of those.
Wait,
endless doors.
are you saying I'm your boo?
What? I can confirm nor deny any of that. Anyway, but yeah, and so I remember when the first movie came out, I was 8 years old, and so probably something you don't want to show your 8 year old with this first one. But growing up, I've also been a probability guy, where like, what are the chances of this happening? Because that's all life really is. The fact that we're here on this planet is chance, probability. A rock ended up going so far from the sun, so that way it didn't melt or it didn't freeze, so just enough to where life can develop and blah 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 blah. And so to me, it's all just probability. And so
Yeah.
this movie, that's what that is, where it's like, hey, that one in a they even go as far to say it in the first 10 minutes, where they're like, dying on a roller coaster, it's a 1 in 5 million chance or something like that.
250
Had me
million.
rolling my eyes a little bit, whatever. But yeah, and so it's something like that where I've always kind of tiptoed. I don't step on any cracks because I want to avoid breaking my mother's back. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But no, again, it's always in the back of my head in any scenario. It's like, how can you get out? How can you be prepared for any scenario? And so, yeah, that I feel like this movie may have contributed to that. I remember going on a plane for the first time when we went to Disney World, and I kept thinking of that scene in Fight Club, also in this movie, where like the planes get torn apart and stuff like that. So, yeah. I mean, it scared the shit out of me to the point where I don't know when these episodes are going to release, but our Nightmare on Elm Street episode, I talk about how Freddy scared me so much as a kid that I never really watched the movies because I was scared. And so I never got back around to them until now. And so it's the same thing with this franchise, where I only remember parts where like the teacher dies at her house, where there's like 5 different death scenes where knives fall on her and the house is on fire and shit like that. But I also remember the plane crash scene. I remember the car crash scene with the log in the second one. So I only remember bits and pieces of them. I don't kind of remember them as a whole. And so seeing this third one was kind of enlightening, rewatching it. But yeah, as a kid, terrifying.
It's such a different kind of horror movie. I think, John, you were right. You equated it to like an invisible killer in a weird way. Silent but deadly.
Yeah.
Toots.
Literally.
But I feel like no one knows when we recorded this. But I also feel like there's if you have any anxiety over anything, the writers of this movie would find it and exploit it throughout the franchise. If you're scared of heights, if you're scared of roller coasters, if you're scared of airplanes, if you're scared of logs, all of those things are going to be exploited. And it's so smart. I feel like that's like such a brilliant, it's why there are so many movies where light is the weakness of the monster.
Yeah.
Because the people are just inherently afraid of death. Well, just that trope has done half of the work for you. And it's that times 10 in Final Destination. It's, some people are scared of, for example, this movie, roller coasters. Cool. Like, we don't have to come up with a new monster. People are already scared of it. So I think that's brilliant. And I don't think I've seen any other Final Destination movie beyond the third one, which we're talking about today.
Really?
So I do wonder how many more fears they can exploit. But let's talk about this one. The third one comes out 2006, which is fairly recent, even though it's 14 years ago. But there was a Casino Royale came out this movie, Night at the Museum, Cars, Happy Feet, X-Men: The Last Stand, which ended up not actually being The Last Stand, Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest. Like, that's a nice trove of movies that came out alongside this one. Roy, we'll start with you. What did you think of Final Destination 3?
It's okay. Like, I feel like I like them, but at the same time, they're super forgettable for me. Like, before I put this one on, I completely forgot the plot, and I was just like mashing up all the movies. I was like, which deaths were in this movie? Like, I mean, I saw all of them already, so like, but it's just kind of like forgettable because I don't know. But to me, they're okay. Like, it's cool, kind of.
Andrew, what'd you think, buddy?
And so since I haven't revisited this franchise, since I was a kid, I think a lot of it surprised me for sure. There's I guess I completely blanked out on like the fact that all of them die and then it's a flashback and then they're like, don't get on, and then death starts to follow them. Because when she was getting on the roller coaster the first time, I was like, oh, she's going to survive because death has to, hunt her down later. And so she never got off the roller coaster, and I was kind of confused. Like, wait, is she about to die? And then John was like, "Yeah, don't you remember? Like, Devin Zawa sees the plane crash, and then it's a premonition or whatever." And no, I didn't remember that at all. And so I had to get used to things again. I can see on how if you did rewatch this whole franchise, on how they could blend together, for sure, because it's like a slasher movie where like how many different ways can Michael Myers kill your ass, And so we're gonna find out. But yeah, and they take 8 movies to do it and stuff like that. I'm not sure. I think there's about like 5 of these, right? 5 or 6.
5.
Yeah, 5.
And so,
6 coming out
to be honest, I think the best part about this movie is how they set up suspense and tension, where they're setting up the dominoes, and you're like, all right, one of them's about to fall, and they're all gonna give. And so, like, it's the smallest thing where it's like, oh, let me put this drink on, this table.
Hey, sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes they intentionally misdirect you.
Yeah, and so I think that is a lot of fun because even today, like you can come up with something super specific where it's like, oh, let me put my phone to charge, and then something happens from there. Or, I'm wiping my ass and I accidentally lean too far forward, and then I fall off the toilet, and then or whatever the fuck. And so it gets pretty specific, and I think that's where I had the most fun with it. Where I was kind of like looking, what's gonna pop out at them next type of thing. I also liked on how I think this might be the first one where like the clue is a person, and so they're like, this guy's gonna murder you. And I was like, oh shit, like I didn't know it had that kind of influence. I thought it was gonna be like, oh, it's just coincidental and like it can only be objects and non-living things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so this one kind of surprised me with that little trick at the end. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, of course. I'm a Mary Mew stan. I'm a Mew stan.
Mew. Yeah, we're all Mew stands
Mewtwo.
here.
We're Mewtwo.
Yeah, exactly. I was a Pokemon and a live action actor. Um, but yeah, and I like that girl from Silicon Valley's in this, which I thought was a neat surprise.
Amanda Crew.
Yeah, yeah. So that was really really cool. I became a big fan of her in Silicon Valley by Mike Judge, and I mean I'm plugging that right now. But yeah, it was really really cool to. I mean, I think they're the only two that were really really kind of okay at acting. So everything else was kind
Yeah.
of a little cringeworthy, and I hated the fact that there was a bunch of like cheesy dialogue, like them telling you the chances of you dying on a roller coaster, and you know.
The explanation, the exposition, like the pictures of shit, like you
Yeah,
kind of knew what they were doing, and then but like them explaining it to you kind of is stupid a little bit. You know what I mean?
yeah,
For lack
and
of a better word.
I did predict that right away, where I was like, "Oh, are the people going to die in these pictures before it even happened?" And so it's a bit predictable.
It's like a Goosebumps episode.
Yeah, yeah, in a way, and but I thought it was a neat add-on to the other ones. I think the other two had clues where it's like, "Oh, I saw this shadow of a guy with claws," and so like Freddy Krueger came in and killed him or some shit. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I thought it was again. I could see on how Roy said it was okay, but I thought it was better than okay because I hadn't revisited the franchise in so long.
Yeah, I think the order in which you see them is super important. And before we go to John's first takes, I feel like because at this time there were probably two other Final Destination movies that came out recently, that may be why people were fatigued at that time. But yeah, coming in hot and fresh, this was pretty fun. Andrew.
Yeah, sorry, piggybacking off of myself. I also think it was weird or cool that they referenced the first one, so that way they can get ahead of it. So like, oh, we're already at the part where we learned what everything, why everything happens, and so now let's find a way to deal with that and get ahead of that. I mean, you only got an hour 30, but
John, what did you think about Final FD3?
FD3. Yeah, I hadn't seen this movie in a long time. I remember catching it like on cable TV, like around the time it came out, like shortly after it was released, Showtime or some shit. I found it's kind of the least effective Final Destination 3 of the trilogy, because I've only seen the three movies. I haven't seen the ones, to me, like the Final Destination movies are kind of like the Saw movies. Like the first one's good, the second one's okay, the third one's okay, and then after that, it's kind of you're definitely milking the franchise. But the third one has some really cool performances by, like Andrew said, Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Amanda Crew, who I think this podcast is a Mary Elizabeth Winstead stan, because we've done Birds of Prey and 10 Cloverfield Lane, and I'm assuming she was in something else too that we watched. But so she was pretty awesome. I think there's some really cool, surprising shots in this, like filmmaking wise, that I think Delphin, I think you had pointed out that there's a Hitchcockian.
There's a split.
It's actually a fat cocky.
there's a split diopter shot of this, a la
cool.
Vertigo.
Yeah, and it's really cool. And there's I think that's one of the more cool death scenes is the because again you have to kind of the spectacle here is the way that the kids die. That's always been a kind of a weird, almost like a sadistic fetish for the audience, I guess.
Like the fun part of this movie.
Yeah, the fun part of this movie is when the scariest parts happen. I mean, like every other horror movie, it's like that, but this one specifically, like you're like, how is this dude gonna die? Oh, he gets his head chopped up by a fucking engine, and or a girl slides into a nail gun and it just nails her face to her hand. But one of the more cooler death scenes, I guess, even though it's a hot death scene, literally, is the tanning bed ones. Because then there's a match cut that matches to their coffins right after like they're burning, and I thought that was really cool and unexpected. Overall, Final Destination 3, I think definitely didn't help. I'm okay when it comes to roller coasters, but it definitely didn't help. Ease. Like I would never get on the Rattler just for the same reason why the same reason that makes this movie scary is why I won't probably get on the Rattler ever. Though, I mean, the Poltergeist or like a safe roller coaster is not out of the question. But overall, yeah, I hadn't seen this movie in a long time. I still think the first two kind of are the stronger takes, and then they kind of stick out in your head a little bit. They stick out in your head more than the third one does. But the third one I've always known for being the Mary Elizabeth Winstead one, and it was not bad. There's the way the movie goes, the way the movie builds the atmosphere and builds the tension. Uh, between each death, like the microphone falls off the bed and it hits like something that's about to roll into something else and will cause the eventual death of a person. That's actually really cool, and I think I know how it would get old if you keep like I know how it will get old if you keep making movies, which apparently it did. But yeah, overall it's a fun franchise where you're not going to get a whole lot of. You don't have to really think too much. It's kind of like it's dumb fun horror, but very effective scares in a way.
Yeah, I enjoyed this movie. I too, like y'all, had not seen a Final Destination movie completely in maybe a decade, to completion. I also kind of melded a lot of them together, and I understood death scenes as they were being set up and remembering them as like, oh my god, they're going to a tanning bed. I know this, but I think that what's really fun is that formula that they mess with. I remember the gym scene in this movie where all of the clues are pointing to the swords, chopping someone's head off, but that wasn't what happened. And I think that that's what's really, to John's point, fun about this movie, which is weird. I don't know what part of humanity that's appealing to, where we want to see people die. But I remember being 12 years old and trying to look up facesofdeath.com. So that is a real part of our lives. Yeah, I think that it's incredibly cinematic. I was so surprised just how well thought out things were shot in this movie. And you really can't go wrong with just playing towards people's fears. But to Andrew's point, I have never seen a human be the clue in a weird way. And I don't know, maybe at some point we'll see old age as a clue, or a disease, or COVID as a clue, because death comes in all factors and shapes, and it does come. Hey, listeners, death comes for us all, whether or not it happens on a roller coaster or alone in a bathtub when you're 90 years old and you've slipped on a Dove bar of soap.
Whoa, that's pretty specific. Is that how you want to go? I was thinking like
No, he was setting up the dominoes.
No.
He was trying to set up all the dominoes.
Oh, okay.
And
But the temperature just a degree too hot, and he was gonna jump out the shower while he dropped the soap for the millionth time.
and we are sponsored by Dove, so I did have to throw that in there. But Roy, was there a specific death sequence that stuck out to you that was one of your favorites, maybe?
The nail gun. Yeah, like I don't know. It's pretty gruesome. I think that was like the most gruesome because she was still alive for like a bit. Like it wasn't like instant. Like the jock, like when his had smashed, like it's over instantly. I mean the girls, I guess they felt it, but like the nail gun just seemed a lot more worse than anything else. It's just And then the boyfriend having to watch is even worse. Like it's just like this scene alone was just fucking crazy.
Andrew, what was your favorite death? Oh, was this weird? Should we not be doing this?
Kind of a little weird. No, but this is how the movie goes. Actually,
I guess I'll go to my favorite sequence.
Yes.
I don't want because I mean we always have a favorite sequence in a movie.
Is it the opening titles?
No, man, it is really bad. It looked like I made it. I'm gonna pick my favorite sequence, and my favorite sequence is the ending on the train. Because it was a surprise. I remember telling John, like, oh, all three of them are going to be on the train. And then I was like, okay, they're dead. Cool. And then it went back in. And so I'm like, oh, shit. Like, it's just going to keep restarting the game. So technically you can beat it this time, but it's going to come back around again.
She could be in hell, too. I was like, oh, maybe this is her hell. Just constantly being worried.
Like purgatory.
John, what was your favorite sequence?
Fuck. Favorite sequence.
Oh, I don't remember that sequence.
Well, there's no actually. Fuck. I think my favorite sequence is the first build up. I think when they're in a drive-through, they're gonna go through a drive-through restaurant, and the fucking the fucking radio starts to, tune by itself. It tunes into a different radio station, and you hear
Very like Christine,
yeah, like Christine.
Horror movies.
You kind of start, it sets for some reason, it's like a Bee Gees song, right? So like I should probably have done more research on this fucking song.
What is it? It's someone behind you because the song plays like 3 times. Like it's something like that. It's really good. It was a really really cool.
Someone behind you. Anyway, so I like the fact that that started to play, and then you start to see.
It's the motif, baby. It's the Darth Vader march.
I think it's played by the Vogues. That's what it says.
What if the Darth Vader march started playing during that scene, and then Mary Elizabeth Winstead had a vision of Darth Vader?
Yeah, and it slices her head off.
Slices her head off.
So yeah, because then you start seeing the truck like in that sequence, like back up towards them, and then you see like a runaway truck in the background. Like that was framed, I think, pretty awesome. Like where you just see a truck way off in the background, and then it starts like going, heading towards them. And and it ends in a kind of very brutal death for like a very unlucky bastard. But that build up, that first tense build up to it, you're like, holy shit.
To be honest, he kind of deserved it. He was shooting those pictures up the skirt, like some super pervy shit. I was like, holy fuck, this guy would be put away.
Everyone's so cool with it too. I was like, silly boy. But also, what a badly secured engine in that vehicle.
In the truck.
That's what I thought.
What car brand agreed to that? Because I would be like, no. Our engines do not fly out and smash people in the head. My favorite sequence is probably the first one, the roller coaster. That ride it has literal twists and turns and drops in it, and just the fact that you can control someone's adrenaline as it goes up and down, and they milk that for however the length they milk that baby for however long they possibly could. There were moments where people were upside down. I don't know if you remember, but they saved someone's life only for them to be smashed up against another thing. Like it was that
torso, right? Gore.
Yeah, and we just see like blood and guts smashing everywhere, and I feel like that was pretty good. You know what? Another franchise we didn't talk about this Halloween. No, not Halloween. Saw also is kind of like a what's your favorite death kind of movie. But Roy, what did you have to add?
Well, I don't know if you guys caught this, but like at that scene where at the very beginning, my friend pointed it out too, is when they're getting on the roller coaster and she sees it all happen, but then she intervenes and she's like, no, like this is gonna happen. The thing that initially caused it was the camera, right? Because like that's the thing that pulls the wire. But that guy got off with the camera, so how did like everything, when he dropped the camera, it's what pulled that wire off, and then everything started going haywire. So like in my mind, we were like, so what happened then that made the roller coaster crash? Because like that's just like an error or something. Like it was just weird for me. It was just cool.
There has to be some kind of. I mean, I don't know. I don't care it because part of the fun of this is there really isn't an explanation. Does that make sense? It's not like you're picked, death picked you. Even though sometimes the signs say die or something like
literally like
kill. Sorry. But yeah, was that a thread in the other Final Destination movies where they were able to see pictures and there were like extra clues? Okay.
Well, actually,
did y'all like that?
The fourth one had something like that where I can't remember because like I'm telling you, they meshed it all together. But she was able to see like one of the characters was able to see the deaths before they happened and just trying to stop them. But this is the first one where like the pictures are blue. Yeah.
I remember when she was like, "Look at this," and it was a picture of Abraham Lincoln, and I was like, "What is happening in this movie?" It's like she's gonna save Abraham Lincoln. But I also know that in one of the later movies, I think they revisit one of the people from the earlier three, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. She's like in a psych ward or something.
Yeah, the second one.
I think it's the girlfriend to Devin Zawa's character.
Okay, yeah.
They said she's in like solitary because she wants to be because it's safe. Like nothing else can get in.
Yeah, do you feel like in another like weird way, the message of this movie is to just who cares because you're gonna die anyways whenever it happens,
Pretty much.
which is weird.
They
There's
kind of
nothing
mess.
you can do.
They kind of mess with that dynamic a little bit by suggesting like the last person in line should just kill themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that trick done.
Well,
I think that they bring that up in a later movie, don't they?
yeah, I was
Okay.
about to say like they brought that up where the guy tries to shoot himself in the head and the gun doesn't go off like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. And I think in a later one, someone at work was telling me about like someone trying to hang themselves and it's not
Yeah.
working. Like it,
Yeah.
like, so Anchorman's that shit or something. Like it just pulls down the ceiling, or like it's like you can't. It's like in a way, you know how you can't cheat death by like, but you can also cheat, like in these
They
movies.
did, yeah.
Like you can't cheat the plan that death has for you.
Is it true that I think at the last one that the ending is that they turn around and they end up seeing like Devon Zawa and the cast of the first one? Can anybody confirm
What?
that? Someone
I don't
I think told
remember.
me today, and
There's
I was
a
like,
montage in the Final Destination 5 credits, I think.
A
There's
montage?
a montage of all the people who have died, and it basically just has like but I don't know if it's like what you're explaining. I'm gonna look that up actually.
yeah,
right now.
because someone told me that today at work because I was talking about it. That I watched it or
Andrew,
whatever.
are you describing them as like Force ghosts from Star Wars?
No, like that they happened to be on the same plane and their movie was a prequel.
Okay. Oh, that's crazy.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
that's
That would
insane.
blow my mind. And see, like you
Yeah.
can do cool stuff with it,
Yeah. I think there's always ways for you to find nice new accidental deaths. Like always. Roy.
I had a question though. Okay, so and this is just me thinking about the whole movie though too, because I have brought it up with my friends. But like, if they're supposed to die on the roller coaster, why is there clues in the photos? Like, was that like, like this is how you're gonna die, but you're supposed to die on the roller
Yeah.
coaster? So was that like just like a plan B or like?
That's why I was gonna bring up we need to know a little bit more, but then I was like, you know what, I'm okay with it.
I
But
wasn't.
yeah, that was a huge because there were also multiple pictures. I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
that. Remember they tried to save the guy who died with the engine block. They thought he was going to die differently because he was in a different photo.
Yeah.
But then they found a second photo because then you'd be like, well, which photo should we be looking for here on this night? But I feel like the explanation I have in my head is on the night when you're about to die, or like when you're in around the hour time frame you're about to die, you get like a small chance maybe, and that's what the photos. I don't know, but yeah, I was just saying like they're showing you the plan B.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I really don't.
I feel
But
like
I don't need to know. Maybe.
Yeah, I guess so. I think like if we really wanted the concrete rules to this, sorry, I'm crushing a soda bottle. If y'all can all hear that. If you wanted
Wait,
to,
John,
like,
I have a photo of you holding a soda bottle.
just like, oh yeah, it was just here. Like we were all looking at it. I think the more concrete, if you wanted, like, I think all of that stuff is kind of laid out in the first movie, right? If I'm not correct, because the first movie takes a long time, or whatever rules it's established. Like they take a long. Devon Zawa is like obsessed with that, and then he describes it, and I think it flows a little bit more naturally the first time around, kind of like every horror slasher movie. Like it's just more fresh the first time you see it.
Yeah.
So a lot of those rules, I think, are like, because the motif started in that movie. Like they keep seeing Flight 180 everywhere. The words 180 or the numbers, not words, and stuff like that. What's really cool is I was just reading about the first one right now. The first one was originally a spec script for an episode of The X-Files, which most of this crew comes from.
Nice.
The director, right?
Yeah, the writer and the director come from The X-Files writing team.
Wow. I feel like there was in the 2000s a lot of movies about kind of premonitions in a weird way. Does that make sense? Butterfly 23 was a movie. There was a movie called Premonition, Minority Report. They were all about things that were going to happen. And I don't know where we were as a culture where we were really wanting to be able to avoid something inevitable.
Yeah,
but
scared of the future. Like,
that could have been a genre.
It seems like it still is, sort of.
Yeah. You do know what? I feel like now Tenet, even Endgame, and who knows, but I feel like we're in like a multiple universe phase where we really want because that's where we want to be, probably as a society, somewhere else. Which is not true. You can't do it, guys.
You can't. We live in a society.
Yeah. Well, sorry, we're going down a dark path. What are some other things with this Final Destination movie that y'all want to talk about? Yeah, Roy.
The subject of like if you want to see your own death, like they keep bringing it up where they're like, oh, like I want to see my own photo. I want to see how I die, and like I don't know, like. Would you guys want to like know, or would you just like?
Ooh, yeah. That's a really big moral quandary because one of the characters never wants to see it.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wouldn't want to see it either.
It's like a it's like a Schrodinger's cat thing. I don't know. I don't know if I want to see how I die. I would just like to know if it's tomorrow.
If it's fast and painless.
I guess that's pretty. I guess that's pretty. I wouldn't know the answer to that question because right off the bat you would think like no, but you get to thinking about it, you're kind of like, oh, maybe.
Yeah. But then also there's just the mentality of just live like it's your last day.
Yeah, because I think if you have like an ending, I mean, well, I don't know, shit. Now we're getting into some moral stuff here.
Yeah, like if I really wanted to live like it's my last day, I would do some fucked up stuff. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow, you're like living like if it's the Purge or something.
Yeah.
Well, I want to know
today's the Purge.
Like,
yeah, Roy.
If it's like big fish rules where like if you know how you're gonna die, you're pretty much immune to death. You know how like in the movie Big Fish, he was able to do all that stuff because he knows how he dies. So technically, he can't die.
Yeah.
So like you could do whatever you want and not die until it's your turn.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I guess it depends what the details are. Like if they were like, hey John, you're gonna die in Paris, France. John's just never gonna go to Paris.
Well, Paris, Texas.
Oh snap, John, loophole. The other moral quandary in this movie is when they go around telling the other people who escaped death how they would die and witness their death. And that became a moral thing of, are you going around causing it by accident? Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're talking about it. They're like, the cops must be suspicious because like after like the fourth death, they're like, dude, these kids have been around every single death. Like, it's ridiculous.
I don't think that's ever like kind of that thread it's hinted at in the movie, and I think it would have been an interesting like plot. I think they do that in the first one. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I think the cops are on to Devon Zawa and they kind of like they're after him, like the authorities are after him.
Yeah.
Because he's always there at the scene of the crime. It's not really explored a whole lot in this, except for like one scene with a horse. You see the cops like kind of tailing one of the kids there, and then they chase a horse, and then that's it. Like after that, no one cares. Like it seems like or the authorities don't care that all these kids keep dying.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, see, like that's an interesting thing, and I think it would have made for a cool little subplot, like because something to explore, because that is you technically are causing these people's deaths because you're telling them how they're going to do it. Like
you're there, you're like, hey, watch out.
Yeah, like be careful not to trip on them. They're like, what, this? And then they fall and then they die or something.
I was actually reading up on the fifth one to confirm whether that's the way it ends, and it is the way it ends.
Really?
It's a sequel prequel to the first one, and so the two survivors at the end, they're like, "Oh, cool, we made it," and then they look and they edit it to where like it's like the original cast and stuff like that.
The footage, yeah.
And so they're on the same plane, and so I'm like, "Oh, fuck!" But anyway,
wow.
I also learned that you can make death skip you if you kill somebody. That's a new piece of the lore that happens in the fifth one, by the fifth one. And so I was like, oh shit, this is kind of interesting, and it makes me want to go watch all of this.
It reminds me of It Follows. If you remember that movie where, is it called It Follows?
Yeah.
The one where they have to do it in order to, that one, that was a really cool thing too, that kind of faced inevitability and all that kind of the themes around that. But I loved, I love these movies growing up because of how, not fun, what would I say? Entertaining, maybe complicated. They're like Rube Goldberg machines of death that were happening to people. This was before Saw too, where someone was actually building machines of death. But this movie was definitely that. And I think Andrew, you brought up the fact that some of the characters weren't necessarily too fleshed out, and I agree. Like they were all archetypes. They were in high school, and that was like the easiest thing to maybe set it in, to have a jock and a nerd and a goth. Drew, what did you think?
They even set up like a storyline where they're like, "Hey, I'm gonna break up with them," and then they don't. There's like no repercussions of that at all.
Oh
in the
yeah,
movie. They just
so
kind of
dark
forget.
and twisted. Ugh, just made things so complicated, and then you're like, okay, cool. Roy, well, you're
Yeah,
gonna add something?
I was gonna say it's kind of weird, and I don't know like if I should bring it up, but when those two girls dies, I guess they were 17 and they were like topless. So I'm just like, huh, like that's really weird for them to film that because like at the funeral, like the guy was like, they're not even 18 yet, and they fucking died. But then I was just like, oh fuck, like they were.
Oh,
I see what you're saying, but the actors weren't. I
No, yeah,
assume,
yeah, for sure. But I
unless
was
we're
just
all
like,
going to
crap.
jail.
yeah, that is a weird thing to bring up like on screen. I guess you're right.
I the funerals were always a part of the movie that were also interesting because they were where the outburst happened, and then I don't know.
It's an attempt to like try to get you to like, even though these characters don't really like, they're not all of them are likable, which is like I guess easier to watch when they die
Yeah.
or something, because like all of these characters are like archetypes and very goofy, like they're goofy archetypes. Like you can pull these teenage like stereotypes out of the fucking 80s. You know what I mean? Like from an 80s movie, and it's it's in a, like a like first draft like characters where you're kind of like, oh, we just need like a we need a douchebag, and then you have a guy like filming someone the entire time or something.
And I feel like maybe that is on purpose because then you care more about the way they die than you do about them. And the only ones that you care about are Mary Elizabeth. Well, I don't want to say the only ones, but you just care about the few that actually you have stakes in, that they show as being mournful and stuff. Because a lot of the people that die are not sad that long.
Yeah,
A lot
like
of them are very cool.
the sister's friend, you had no idea until the very end. You're just like, oh crap, and she's like, who was next to you? Like last second, she fucking dies, and you're like, oh man, like no
Of
story at all.
course, and of course, it's the only Asian character. Quiet, submissive, obedient, and dead.
Yeah.
Um,
Holy shit! I'm
Yeah.
reading about the fifth one. It seems like the fifth one is the most well received. Like it literally, all of the movies have like a 30% or something like that on Rotten Tomatoes, and Final Destination 5 has a 65%. Yes, you're right. It's not passing, but it's like a giant 63%. Excuse me, a giant like gap between the other ones, and this one actually got like a lot of good reviews and shit. Weird.
this movie, hold on, I'm googling it. But this movie, did it do well? Oh yeah, it made a ton of money.
Yeah, I mean they made two more after this, so it had to have done a ton of money.
I wonder what I think people probably are just over the novelty of it, and that may be why. I think we talked about it earlier, but I think watching like two in a row, and you may start just not caring that much. So maybe that's why people were just over it at this point, because coming in fresh like this, I had a good time.
I think this one had the
Had
weakest.
a great time.
Like well, compared to the other ones, I was talking to a friend and he was like, I don't know if it was his first time watching it too, because he was just like, oh crap, and I mean, I don't know if it's because I've seen it, but I was just like, dude, those are like kind of lame, because there's one where like, I don't know if you guys seen past the third one, but the guy is swimming and death does its thing, and the pool suction at the bottom is super strong, so like he gets sucked to the bottom.
Wow.
And like he gets everything sucked out of his ass like through the pump. And like, yeah, I know it's crazy, but I'm just like, whoa, like like compared to the other movies, these are real mild deaths. Like
I guess we have to rewatch these and kind of rank all the deaths, because I don't remember that being sucked out of your butthole.
yeah, I'll send it to you on IM so you can watch it.
No, you don't have to. I can imagine it's pretty hardcore. Well, let's go around and give our final thoughts on Final Destination 3, anything that you think we might have missed, and then just what you thought of the movie. We'll start with you, Roy.
Final thoughts. It's an okay movie. I feel like the series has gone down now that there's other stuff like Saw. You know, definitely Saw. I think brings it down a bit because I don't know, but I know they are working on a sixth one that's coming out
Wow.
pretty soon. I don't know. I just seen posters on it online, so I'm just like trying to figure out now. Like, I wonder what kind of deaths they'll have. So,
Oh
but
my
yeah,
gosh. So I wait. Yeah, continue your
no,
thought,
no, no,
and then
that's
I
it. That's
have
it. That's
stuff
it.
on.
You can
Okay,
go.
so the sixth movie is confirmed to be canon. They announced it last month and gave the details that it focuses on first responders, EMTs, firemen, and police, people who deal with death on the front lines every day and make choices that can cause people to live or die. But that is how they frame the next Final Destination movie.
I will say a hot take by saying that that might be a bad take in this day and age. Just I don't know, just putting that out there. I don't know if that might seem a little insensitive in today's
It
you know,
does.
yeah, because like that's you I know that horror comes from the real basically, like and true horror but like true horror, like when it's a little too real like that, it's maybe a little exploitive because you know what I mean? Like it's not too heightened like the way not that I mean, I don't know. It's complicated, I guess, then or something because like, you kind of want to make another take on it and a fresh take. And I think I just told Drew yesterday that I was like I had like if they were to give us the Final Destination,
Franchise.
like IP, I would frame it like a Cohen brothers, like No Country for Old Men type of a movie, sort of. I know that sounds really ridiculous because the Final Destination movies are built on camp, but that would be like a straight face reboot in a way. Putting like adding firemen and policemen into it is a little too real, just because
Yeah.
because of everything that's been going on.
Drew, what do you think? Are you already pre-ordering your tickets?
No, no, definitely not for this new. I mean, I'm excited to see what a modern age can bring to that type of story because obviously, you're gonna have to write yourself out of corners. You're also gonna have to adjust to what came before you, but also kind of do something different. And so, maybe a reboot, maybe sometime a show or something. I don't know. But anyway, I think it would be interesting to, like the way John said on his take on what a new Final Destination would be. I think it'd be interesting to bump into somebody who has avoided death for so long by turning into a murderer, and to where he's kind of like you can kind of make it a real slasher. You can kind of also, just do a little bit something different, basically than your normal. You basically give it an antagonist, because right now you're the antagonist. You don't really see. You just know again it's kind of a force. Um, so I think something like that might be cool. But even then, after that, what's next?
Oh, you didn't know there was actually an actress who played Death in the franchise, but she did such a good job. It was Meryl Streep. She just disappeared into the role. Oh, yeah. Well, Andrew, let us know what were your thoughts on Final Destination 3?
I thought it was. I liked it better, but again, better than I thought I was going to. But that's because I haven't been around the franchise for long since the first time I watched it. Since the first time it terrified me, and so I think I'm just on a new content high where I'm like, oh man, this concept's interesting, and your mind kind of goes crazy with the possibilities and stuff like that. And so it just kind of reintroduced me to it, I guess. And so reading up on the fifth one, I am actually super interested and curious. It's kind of like what happened with the Paranormal Activity movies, where like for sure there's too many of them. But the more I watched, the more I wanted to find out about the lore and the what you can do to kind of confront the issue and the problem and the creative ways that people would try to avoid it and what works and what doesn't. So you're kind of laying down the more movies there are, the more ground rules you're setting. And so I think something eventually could be a little bit more fleshed out or just more I mean, it just takes one creative mind to kind of approach the franchise and just kind of spin it a different direction that actually works. So just
Yeah,
I thought this one was okay in that sense.
they need to get Werner Herzog to make it because he already made a movie about death. I don't know if y'all have seen it. It's a documentary. He interviews death row inmates before they die. It's hardcore, but dang, it's pretty effective, and it's about the inevitable death.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think this year we've watched two movies that have to deal with death. Both Bill and Ted Face the Music, and also Final Destination.
That's true.
Some in more literal and comedic versions of death.
Both of them scare me.
Yeah. Both versions of hell are very different.
John, what did you think about Final Destination 3?
I like that you pronounce it Jean. I like that.
Jean?
Jean Valjean. Final Destination 3. What were you going to say?
Les Mis?
It was a Les Mis reference.
Wow.
The book, not the movie.
Okay.
Final Destination 3. These movies will never. It doesn't really matter. Like, I know the quality of the movies are up for debate, really. Like, when you watch them, but and then like Roy said, like the deaths in this movie aren't the strongest too. Like once you kind of step back and realize, like even the roller coaster scene, as tense as it is and as scary as it is, I think the scariest parts are watching the kids kind of like hold the seat down. Like that's the scariest part for me because once they die, they just kind of fall off screen. Like you don't see them. You're just like, whoa. It's kind of a little bit more one of the I don't want to say one of the weaker entries in the franchise, but I do think that Mary Elizabeth Winstead's performance kind of carries. She's her performance is very full compared to everybody else's, and it's she kind of carries the movie and adds like emotional weight to it. These movies will never. I've never finished my thoughts. Sorry, will never not scare me because of the way they're structured. Like you're watching literally a round of characters bite it, like all of them. And they're gonna die in very gruesome ways and in very accidental ways that and all in life you try to kind of avoid that, in other words. And I think that's a primal fear. Like you don't want to trip over something and then land face first into like a bucket of scissors or some shit. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of when you heighten it like that, it's cartoony. It's like Looney Tunes basically in a way. But the way the movies kind of like, I guess the fear around whoever the lead is in these movies like kind of sells it. And I think there's at least like one or two good performances in all of these movies. I haven't seen 4 or 5, but I'm sure that holds the same for those. But yeah, I mean they're brutally effective horror movies, very quick and easy to digest horror movies for audiences. And I think I think the first one and the franchise itself deserves to go down in history because of the way it flips, like I said earlier on the podcast, the slasher genre on its head. I do think that it's cool that you don't have, a monster, chasing you down. It's literally just like the clock, basically. Like, when's your time up, and your time's going to be up pretty soon.
Right.
And I like the movie, yeah.
I was gonna say if they do remake it, they should make it with actual historical events. Like I mean, it's just stupid, but like Titanic, like if they had survived Titanic, death would have been after them or some stuff. Like just change the time.
Rose, you're talking about Rose? She's gonna get it.
Death is after her. But no, like it would be interesting.
That's
No, like
Yeah,
it would be interesting to see. Like,
I could see a period piece.
yeah, like because everything's now like super modern. Like I want to see someone die like in the old 1920s or 1890s, and just like the weird shit they could come up with there.
Oh, Black Plague.
it would literally just be like 1,000 Ways to Die, the show, and just as a movie. The final destination, like the final destination. I don't know how many F's you need to have in there. Would just be like a meteorite like hitting the Earth or like the sun, like supernovae. Like that's how everybody loses. Like it's just like that last final. I think this series, goddamn, I just got an idea for this movie franchise. Like they can get meta. Like you can have people watching, like like Bandersnatch or some shit. Like watching the Final Destination and then start like dying off, like in Ring or like the ring fashion or something. Like I don't
Well, I
know.
mean,
That's pretty funny.
think about how often everyone escapes death. It happens all the time, probably, but then also everyone dies all the time, so they don't really escape it. Andrew,
Yeah, and I think that's funny because John was saying a comet hitting the Earth and stuff like that. But what if someone went up there and was able to deter the comet, and so they all escaped death on the planet, and it was
Yeah.
just normal life because death just comes for everybody separately.
Like
and
Armageddon.
nothing changes because it already happens, baby. Yeah. I thought this movie was incredibly fun and surprising. It's cinematic. I already talked about how visually this movie was really exciting to me. And I feel like that they played around with the formula a little bit more in this movie. Maybe not to the extent it sounds like as Force Ghosts or whatever happens later on. Not Force Ghosts, but with the story. I do think that all these movies tend to blur together because of the formula, which isn't bad because that's probably why it stands the test of time. To John's point, there's no serial killer, there's no symbol, or there's no mask that you can recognize. It's just death, and death is a great death is a great villain, and this movie is incredibly fun. And now that I think about it, I was about to complain about the characters, but then I thought maybe it is intentional. Maybe they are the way they are because we aren't supposed to care about them at all.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and you end up not really caring about them. But I'm excited for I was about to say Final Fantasy. I'm excited for Final Destination. Whatever iteration comes out next, we'll have to see. It sounds like they're going to be touching on some interesting subjects.
Yeah.
But I think it's still something that will work for me, depending on how intense these deaths are. But yeah, it was such a good movie and a good horror movie. It's kind of a meld between suspense and gore because it's not necessary. Well, it is very gory. We see people splash into puddles of blood.
It's like a supernatural element to it too, which is crazy. Yeah.
You don't see that often, but yeah, super exciting. Well, hey, now it's time. Time has come for us. Death has come to us in terms of the end of the podcast.
Right. Yeah. It's killing the podcast. Uh-huh.
It's time for plugs. Roy, what do you have to plug?
Nothing really. Just be safe out there. Take precaution whenever you go out. That's pretty much it.
That's a great plug. And I feel like this is the second to last episode of our. Wait, no, this is the third. I don't know when this is coming out, but yes, it's October, so definitely be safe during Halloween.
Wear your mask for Halloween.
Andrew, what do you have to plug?
I was gonna wait for you to call one of us, and then no matter how long that took. But anyway, what Roy said. Be safe if we're going out trick or treating or whatever. Maybe not go trick or treating, but also register to vote. The election in the United States, for our overseas listeners, you don't have to worry about this. But get your friends in the United States to vote. Register to vote for sure. So that way, you can make a difference.
Yeah, please do.
John.
I don't have a whole, stay safe during this Halloween season. Obviously, please go out and vote if you're in the U.S. Please fucking vote. Go to patreon.com/DelphinPod and listen to this podcast and along with some other exciting shows that we have there. We got some really fun and funny shit that you can chow down on. Not literally, but for your ears.
Down.
Yeah, it's ear food. There you go.
Let your ears eat, baby. Support the pod at patreon.com/DelphinPod. Listen to Countdown to Infinity, our Marvel show. That's still out. That's still coming out as well. If you want to see some videos of some really strong hosts, that's all on patreon.com as well. And I just want to reiterate, you do have time to still register to vote, and you'll have the chance to vote in a couple of weeks. So it'll be exciting. Just like Final Destination, we might avoid death, depending on this election.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we all will.
I'm just kidding. The stakes are high, but maybe they are that high for some people, though.
Okay.
They probably are. Yeah,
definitely.
But awesome. Thank you all so much. Don't go on any roller coasters. Don't drive in front of any trucks with loose engines. Let's see what else. Don't work out.
Don't go flying anywhere.
Don't go flying anywhere. Watch out for log trucks.
Yeah, watch your. Do not take the school bus to school.
Don't go to Home Depot.
Don't go to
Home Depot's off limits.
Don't go to the racetrack, which is one
Don't
of
go to the racetrack.
Avoid fireworks.
Don't do
Don't
anything.
fireworks.
Yeah, don't go into the swimming pool unless you want your ass sucked to death.
Ooh, I'm going.
I just sent out the link.
Stay home. Actually, quarantine.
You should be staying home as well. But yes, avoid death at all costs.
Thanks, Roy, for being on, man.
Thanks,
No
Roy.
problem, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, I'm going to stop